Hi everyone, hope you're doing great. This is Maro. So in my recent video on summers, and you can see that video here, I came across data suggesting that when it comes to Marceau, the difference between not so good players and great players appears to be very big, especially when it comes to the average damage. In this video, I take a closer look at Marceau, some of the factors that potentially could be causing this difference. And I compare Marceau to Somers because Somers appeared to be the ship with the smallest differences in tier 10. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. So with that, let's get started. Marceau is a tier 10 French premium destroyer available for call. It's pretty widely available. It's ahead of all the other premiums. Obviously, they're steel and just 2 million free XP, so not cheap, but still, the ship is more widely available and it's also widely played. Marceau's win percentage is not really astounding. It's 50.9%, middle of the pack, so nothing to brag. If anything, it would appear Kleber actually does a lot better. So that's, a rare instance of a Tech 3 ship doing better than a premium version. So something of note. In terms of average damage, Marceau's performance is pretty bad, and I think that's what caught my eye. I didn't expect to see Marceau be fourth from the bottom, given that the amount of damage that this ship can generate in hands of good players and in a lot of videos that I've seen out there. So obviously, once I got the ship, I decided to play her the same as some of the YouTubers, and I had mixed results. But it seems that my mixed results are more common than I thought. Looking at the global Q3 2020 average damage, good players, players with win rate 65 to 100 according to MapleSyrup data, Marceau fourth highest damage. Not fourth from the bottom, fourth highest. So that's very good company. Well, if the good players are doing so well, why is the average so low? Clearly, very good players know something that the rest of us don't. And how much less do we know? Here is Class C, Marceau, third from the bottom, 28,000. I mean, Småland is not that far off. And I think that's one of the reasons I thought Småland looks very good, because a lot of good players are playing her. But I think if you account for the quality of the player base, the results may not be as stellar. And then again, that may be because the ship is also difficult to play. But in any case, Marceau is third from the bottom, with Somers again comfortably at the top. And that's why when I think about what ships, should people get, or should they even get Somers before she's gone, I would say yes. If you're interested in playing destroyers, Torp destroyers, Somers is a good ship to have because it consistently does good damage regardless of skill. Unlike some other ships, like Marceau, where very good players appear to do really well, and the rest of the players, not so much. Of course, this got me very curious to see, well, what's the difference between Class A and Class C in terms of average damage? So here it is. Marceau, 121%. No other ship, no other tier 10 destroyer has as big of a difference. Gross, Kaba, and Småland follow with 90. And then you go down all the way to Somers, 40. And I look at this and I use this as a proxy for how difficult the ship is to play for most of the player base. Somers, given the smaller difference between damage numbers, suggests to me that everybody can play this ship decent enough. Marceau, not so much. So obviously I went and aggregated data by class on global basis, class A, B, C, D, E, for Marceau on top, for Somers on the bottom. And I think what's really important to keep in mind here is the differences between different classes. So looking at Marceau damage, class A, 62,000 on average, class C, 28. Then we have ship destroyed. So this is on average how many ships were destroyed, aircraft destroyed, base capture, defense, how many players survived, right? So 44% survival, that means, you play 10 games, you survive 4 games, you don't get killed. Kill to death ratio, which is really tied to survived and ship destroyed. Potential damage, the higher the number, it implies that the ship spent a lot more time being shot at. So if you're playing as a silent torpedo boat, that you would expect that you won't be shot a lot and those potential damage numbers won't be necessarily as high. While if you're a destroyer that spends a lot more time in the open, firing at the enemy, they fire back, your potential damage numbers are going to be higher. Then you have spotting damage, and then you have accuracy. After splitting the data by class and looking at multiples, so I would say take a look at the class A, take a look at the class E, in terms of damage, 2862, that's 2 something times. And I guess here, if you take a look at the category damage in red, it's for Marceau, it's 2.2. So that means class A does 2.2 times more damage than class E. In case of Summers, outlined in blue, it's 1.4. They lined up basically by biggest differences. And here you can see that Marceau, killed death, survived, warship destroyed, damage, are categories where the difference is very large. And when you look at it in comparison to Summers, it's a lot more. And this is where Marceau players are struggling a lot more with this ship than they are, let's say, with Summers, which is more player friendly. And now kill death is also a combined stat between survived and warship destroyed. But your ability to survive and I guess destroy ships, because in a gunship you're trying to use your guns, everybody's shooting at you. Your ability to do that well is not easy. It's much easier to launch torps from stealth, and you'll miss, and you'll hit. But you don't necessarily have as much at risk as you do when you're playing this as a Marceau. And I assume that you don't do a lot of stealth torping in Marceau. Now, the other categories, potential damage, accuracy, spotting damage, they're all in line. Then some other ones, they start to kind of go up a little bit. But I think really it comes down to survival and destroying warships. Now, obviously, I think the whole game is about that. But I think what this highlights is that this basic fact of the game, it's a lot harder to pull off in a Marceau than in Summers. Recently, what I did is I actually changed how I play Marceau. So another player that spends a lot of time playing destroyers, Metaman, um, he commented on one of my videos recently, and we exchanged a few messages. And the way he plays Marceau is a typical destroyer, where you really focus on concealment and you try to make yourself relevant around caps and damage that you do in a more typical sense for a destroyer. And I started playing like that as well because that's what makes me more comfortable in the ship, and trying to follow very good players who do great in this ship with their play style seems to be perhaps a bridge too far. Should I say a ship too far for me? And playing it as a typical destroyer, you get to do still pretty well without being able to have these impressive damage numbers. So I guess that's what it comes down to with this ship. And one is, do you get the most out of the ship? And that's where the good players really excel. Or do you try to make the ship work around your skill level and you try to get the most out of the ship that way? In any case, as many of you are maybe looking at getting reward ships, I would just point out that if you're thinking about getting a Marceau, keep in mind that the ship, depending on your skill, it may be difficult to do well in. And especially if you look at some very good players and their videos and you try to emulate that playstyle, it may be hard to do well in that, because that appears to be where the biggest gap is in terms of skill between very good players and not so good players. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be putting any more plugins for Summers, but I will note that Summers appears to be the ship where these differences are the smallest. So, something to keep in mind. I think another topic that came to me as a result of looking at these numbers is I've heard players argue that very good players should have a say in how the ships are balanced in the game. And I'm not sure that should be the case, because you will look at the data, you will look at how the players are doing ship versus ship and so on. You can draw some conclusions from that. But I think what this says is that there are ships where good players do really well. And I think just looking at the data in isolation, it's not necessarily going to tell you that in the game, when you encounter a very good player in this ship, what this player will be able to do to you and your team, or if you're lucky, he's already on your team and then it's the opposite team, will create an impression that this ship is very overpowered. And this ship may be overpowered, but only in hands of such a player, not the rest of the players. And as a result, perhaps having that feedback from the players who can do that with the ship is valuable, because it will point out things that are not necessarily just covered by data in terms of introducing the ships to the game when it comes to balancing, or maybe thereafter once the ships are in the game. Obviously, you have all these issues around premium ships and making changes to those premium ships, not to mention with the new commander rework, everything's just going to go boom. So we'll see where that lands. So with that, we come to the end of the video. I would like to thank you for watching. I hope you found it informative. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And with that, I wish you the best of luck on the high seas. Maro, out.